Hello everyone, I'm bringing you a video today looking at a pair of Dutch issue ammunition pouches. Now these are often referred to as M52, and the equipment set they're from is often referred to as M52. I'm not sure if that's official nomenclature, I've not been able to find direct reference to that, so just to note that here, they are often referred to as M52. There's a lot of reference online to them being referred to as that and the rest of the equipment being referred to as M52 as well. These are analogous to the British 1937 pattern basic pouches. Of course, in the post-war years, the Royal Netherlands Army used a large amount of surplus British 1937 pattern components, and then when they've designed their own equipment, they basically modified the 1937 pattern equipment to suit their needs, including eyelets along the bottom of the belt, because the canteen they chose to use was of course based on the US M1910, and the covers they used were based on the M1910 as well with this new set of equipment. So these pouches are very similar to the British basic pouches. We're going to compare them to a pair of British pouches in the video to sort of show you the difference. And that's what we're going to do now, is have a look at these in some detail and compare them to British 1937 pattern basic pouches. So here we have a pair of the Dutch M52 ammunition pouches, and these are basically analogous to the British 1937 pattern basic pouch. They have some detailed differences, but they basically have the same carrying capacity and they attach to the belt and they're supported in the same manner. They are completely compatible with 1937 pattern. Obviously, the Dutch have been using large quantities of it post-war, surplus, and then the web equipment they designed and manufactured themselves was designed to be compatible with that equipment. It made sense, and that's what they decided to do. So these basically are a version of the basic pouch, slightly modified in terms of manufacture and probably slightly simpler to manufacture because of some of the detailed differences, the changes made. We'll be comparing one of these directly to a British pouch a little bit later in the video, just to give you a clearer idea of how these differ. When these were introduced, of course, the Royal Netherlands Army was still using the Bren gun, so carriage of two 30-round magazines for the Bren was still a consideration, and that was what the basic pouch was sort of designed around, was to carry, the British basic pouch was designed to carry two Bren gun magazines. It would also carry rifle ammunition in charges, of course, which these are perfectly capable of doing, and they are also compatible with the 20-round magazines for the FNFAL, which the Royal Netherlands Army would introduce a little bit later on. Introduced in the early 1950s, of course, hence M52, and then used up until the 1970s. I think it's the mid-1970s, early mid-1970s, the sort of decision taken to no longer use ammunition pouches, and any spare magazines would be carried in the pockets of the combat jacket. I don't actually have a specific date for that, so if anybody could advise, I'd be very interested to know. But certainly photos from the 70s, the later 70s, show that ammunition pouches were no longer being used. The brace attachments were being used in place, and then ammunition pouches were only used in certain specific situations where they were required. But they were certainly used throughout that period, the 1950s and then into the 1960s, of course. Looking at these in a bit more detail, you can see here the construction is similar to the British, and we have a strengthening piece of webbing across the bottom here. They're roughly equivalent in depth. The shape of the lid is a little bit different, but the carrying capacity is basically the same. And at the back, they are basically identical in terms of the way these fit onto the belt. You have C-hooks here, which not only slot around the belt, but also fit into little pockets on the back of the belt. Stop these sliding around, it fixes them in position. The top here we have a section of webbing which forms a fair lead for the brace, shoulder straps coming down, which pass through this. So there's an open channel behind this piece of webbing, which the strap fits through once it's passed through this buckle. So the brace comes down from the shoulder through this buckle, the lower part of this buckle, down through the fair lead and then down the back of the pouch. The top ring here, the top square loop, which forms part of the buckle here, is for the hooks on the L straps, and again these are cross-compatible with 1937 pattern and the Dutch manufactured components of the equipment, basically identical in terms of actual functionality, so completely cross-compatible, as I say. These two are slightly different. They're manufactured in green webbing, to note here. They are manufactured in a dark green webbing, but nevertheless they do have a coating of Dutch KG3 Blanco. It's basically the same sort of colour as the British KG3 later war Blanco, but manufactured in the Netherlands, of course, and they use this colour on the web equipment. We open this up here, you can see in this instance we have a different design of press stud than those you would see used on British pouches, but these are actually chrome or perhaps nickel. You can see the back there is as well, and then the inside of this one, but the outside face is brass, as you can see there. So just to note that there. And then obviously with these pouches, it's just a big open compartment in there to allow you to carry whatever you needed to, but it will comfortably take two Bren gun magazines in there. This one is slightly different. slightly different colour as well, as you can see, just slightly different colour of Blanco used, or it's faded slightly differently. I'll have to take this out of shot to open it up because it's quite stiff, so just give me a moment. There we go. And as you can see here, this one has a brass snap or press stud at the back there. And you can see there, the whole of the snap or press stud is made of brass. We do have a marking on the back of this one, which hopefully we can get in. There we go, durable dot on the back there, showed up quite clearly. I'll remove this pouch now and we'll have a quick comparison to a British basic pouch, which we have here. I'll just close this one up again so we can more closely compare the external details of this. But you can see the main flap, this one's sort of squashed down from having been in storage. I sort of square it up again. They are roughly equivalent in size. Again, you have that reinforcing piece on both. The strap and female press stud are set a little lower on the British pouch because the lid is pointed, as you can see here at the front, which again is slightly more complicated to manufacture. I would say the changes made to this are probably to simplify manufacture. That would make sense. Again, at the side on the Dutch pouch, you just have a square section to the side of the lid, whereas here it's turned back on itself to give an angle here, as you can see. At the back here, they're basically identical. The C-hooks on this, the Dutch example, are slightly simpler in terms of shape, but function in exactly the same manner. They're basically set at roughly the same height on the pouch, slightly lower, but not by much. And as you can see at the top here, the buckle is identical. And obviously these function in exactly the same way. So we've had a look at the pair of the M52 pouches there, and a quick comparison of this British basic pouch Mark III alongside the Dutch pouch here. One thing I would mention is obviously the later Mark IIIs were made with a quick release, which was not copied by the Dutch. They decided to stick with using a press stud. We don't have a quick release example of the British Mark III here, but this fastener was changed for a quick release fastener in later production during the war. And at the bottom here, one feature that was carried across from those later Mark III pouches is a drainage eyelet, which is not present on this early Mark III. They seem to appear around the same time as the quick release in British manufacture. That feature was carried across to the Dutch pouches. The change to the quick release was not. They stuck with this earlier type of closure using a press stud on a little strap on the front there. But as you can see there, slightly simplified manufacture, but otherwise very, very similar. So hopefully you found it interesting looking at this. I am planning some videos going forward talking about Dutch web equipment in a bit more detail, sort of the evolution of it through the Cold War, and certainly I think that would be an interesting topic to cover. Hopefully you agree and would like to see that video when it comes out. It is planned for the future. I can't say exactly when, but I do have it in mind. And compare and contrast some earlier and later sets of web equipment, that would be the idea in that video. Obviously I sort of started collecting the Dutch equipment because it's an evolutionary step in the development of 1937 pattern post-war. Obviously a lot of continental European armies adopted versions of 1937 pattern, and indeed their equipment was sometimes influenced by later British equipment sets as well. So to look at that and sort of have a set of equipment that showed that part of the evolution, I'd sort of gone with Dutch equipment, and the collection has grown to the point where I sort of can recreate sets of equipment from certain periods to some degree at least. There'll be some more kit arriving soon. I believe Kevin Mills, my friend in the Netherlands, is sending me a big batch of stuff, so there'll be an unboxing video looking at that. Obviously, if you're interested in seeing that and you're interested in seeing other content on the channel going forward, please do consider subscribing if you haven't already. And whether you're newly subscribing or you've previously subscribed, please do make sure you hit the little bell, the notification button down below. That will of course alert you when I upload future videos. And that's everything for this video. So until next time, bye for now.